With the release of the GoPro Hero 10 Black, the camera has seen upgrades from the chipset to the frame rates. We all know it works great as an action camera, but can this new version replace a mirrorless camera like the Sony a7S III and become your everyday camera? Will you be able to tell a difference in the footage? Let's find out. So yeah, I realize it's hard to compete with the Sony and its interchangeable lenses and ability to get these nice blurry backgrounds. The GoPro also doesn't have the manual controls of this camera. It's not for professional work, but maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you want something small and versatile you can put in your pocket and go, and also use for a setup like this. And maybe you'd like to save some money. Currently, the GoPro is $399 with a 1-year subscription to GoPro, whereas the Sony a7S III is $3,500 without a lens. Point to GoPro. Slap a lens on there and it's even more. Maybe the better question should be, is the Sony over 8 times better than the GoPro? Speaking of lenses, to keep the comparisons as close as we can, I'll be using the Sony G Master 16 to 35mm lens with a higher f-stop to keep everything in focus just like the GoPro. There are a bunch of resolutions and frame rates on the GoPro, some of which, like the 5.3K 24 frames per second, haven't been unlocked yet and won't be until the November update. So I'll be mainly using 5.3K 30 frames per second, 4K at 24 frames per second, and some slow motion as well. Let's start off with some B-roll and see if you can pick out the GoPro. Honestly, I think the GoPro holds up pretty well here. Could you tell which one it was? It's the one on the left. If you zoom in and take a freeze frame, even though the GoPro is 5.3K and the Sony is 4K, the Sony does hold up a bit better. But in general, I think they both look pretty good. To me, this is a tie. Okay, vlogging. People like to do this, I guess. So with a wide angle lens and a really light weight, the GoPro is actually really great for vlogging. Compared to a mirrorless setup, the GoPro comes in at 0.481 pounds or 218 grams, while the Sony with the GorillaPod and Rode video mic is 5 pounds or 2276 grams. So 10 times heavier. 10 times heavier and 10 times more expensive. All right, let's see if we can pick out the GoPro this time. So which one do you think? Again, it's the one on the left. I'd almost say the GoPro looks way better because of that amazing stabilization. I even had the IBIS on for the Sony, but there's no comparison. Let's take a look again for audio purposes. It's not very windy out here, so hopefully we get a good test here. It's a beautiful day. It's really nice and lightweight. I feel like I could hold this thing forever. Pretty cool. This is ridiculously heavy. I don't think I could do this with my back problems. It's also kind of weird, I don't know. My arm is killing me after about 5 seconds. Yeah, so I actually don't think the audio on the GoPro is bad, especially with the wind reduction feature. That actually works pretty well. But if I was serious about using it for vlogging, I'd probably invest in the media mod and attach something like the Rode Video Micro for some better audio. There's also something to having a really small setup with the GoPro and vlogging versus this big giant Sony setup. It's just less weird. So point to GoPro. Ah, slow motion. Why is everything better in slow motion? The GoPro now has 4K 120 frames per second and 2.7K 240 frames per second, and the Sony has the same 4K 120 and 2K 240. Let's take a look at the clips. Okay, so this time the GoPro is on the left. It's a setup, they're all on the left.
It's a Twix! They're all Twix! It was a setup! A setup, I tell you!
I think the GoPro really holds up well here, especially the 4K 120. Just a few years ago, 4K 120 frames per second was really hard to come by in a camera, and now we're seeing it in a $400 camera. It's pretty cool. I'm giving this one a tie. Lastly, we're gonna look at a talking head indoor setup, basically this right here. GoPros have notoriously struggled in low light, so I'm gonna have to increase the light outputs of all the lights here to try and reduce the noise of the GoPro. And it's gonna look like this. Okay, so here it is with all the settings. For reference, I normally have the key light at 9% and I have a fill light over here at 11%. And for the GoPro, I had to up those to 20 and 50. But I think it looks pretty nice. Does it look as nice as the Sony? No, so point to mirrorless. but it's definitely usable and it's 10 times cheaper. A lot of people have been commenting about the GoPro overheating, especially in an indoor setting. To test it out, I recorded the GoPro on a stand to give some ventilation, and I took the door off. And I was able to record for over 40 minutes at 5.3K, 30 frames per second, without overheating, until the SD card was full. Okay, so it stopped because the SD card was full. The fact that the comparisons were this close really highlights how far cameras have come in such a short period of time. It's now possible to use something like a GoPro as your everyday camera. But would you? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.